Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. After the recent hearings during the very busy week, which was the last week of hearings and matters pending in front of Judge Hippler, who was presiding over the case styled as Idaho versus Kohberger, including multiple motions to suppress evidence, a potential motion for a Franks hearing, and a defense motion to compel. The issue came up of potential remedies associated with chain of custody, if there was any sort of a break in the chain of custody of the sheath that was found on the bed on the third floor of 1122 King Road at the crime scene, and whether the issue of the reliability and the validity of the DNA testing of that sheath had ever been raised by the defense. And I've received a few inquiries from my followers here on YouTube as well as the Indie Zone podcast. And the issue of a potential break in custody or challenging custody was raised, or at least it was raised in discovery that the defense has sought in this case, giving us clues that at least the thought of the validity of the testing and chain of custody has been a matter that the defense, led by Ann Taylor, lead counsel to Mr. Kohberger, has raised. We addressed this in a prior episode of the Indie Zone podcast. If you have not yet had an opportunity to check out the podcast, I do recommend that you do, because it's 5 minutes or less per episode, and each episode just addresses the multiple filings in the case that is now over 2 years. One such episode addressed the defense's third supplemental request for discovery. And as we know, because of the high level of secrecy over the case, the public and the press is at some disadvantage over what this case is all about, on top of all of the filings that have been under seal since the beginning of the case. But the way that the public has learned of what some of the discovery requests have been, and discovery is a request that a party will serve on the other side for documents, for things, for photographs, for other materials that the party believes the other side has in its possession, custody, and control. And when there's a dispute as to whether or not the other side will turn over that requested discovery, after good faith efforts are made to try to resolve the dispute without any court action, the vehicle that's usually used when all efforts have been exhausted to obtain discovery that a party may feel is pertinent and relevant, in some cases crucial to their case, a motion to compel discovery. Remember, a motion is an application for a court order. So when you see a motion to compel discovery, you're going to read a filing that's going to talk about prior efforts, service of discovery request, and maybe efforts to try to, in good faith, resolve a dispute if the other side does not turn over the discovery. The proceeding then moved to district court in Latah County, and Judge John Judge was the presiding judicial officer, and he was for well over a year until change of venue happened, and the case moved in September 2024 from Latah to Ada County, and Judge Stephen Hippler has been the jurist presiding over the case since then. But going back to May 3rd, 2023, I want you to go to the docket. The way that you get to the docket is you follow a link to the Idaho Courts of Judicial Interest. I've provided a link here for you. Go down. You're going to see a few cases before you reach Idaho versus Kohberger. Go down, keep scrolling until you get to May 3rd, 2023. There was a filing that was electronically filed at 4:18 p.m. and it is entitled Defendant's Third Supplemental Request for Discovery. And it says here, please take notice that the undersigned, pursuant to Rule 16 of the Idaho Criminal Rules, and then they go into Constitution of the United States, various amendments, and various portions of the Constitution of the State of Idaho. So this is the legal authority that allows Mr. Kohberger to come forward and file this third supplemental request for discovery. And it says here that what he is asking for standard lab discovery. This is biological testing case file. Please provide a complete copy of the case file, including all records made by each laboratory in connection with biological testing in this case, including biological screening, serological testing, presumptive testing, microscopy, and DNA testing, including statistical calculations. They're also asking for photographic quality, and you go on to page number 2 of this document. It continues, of all photographs in the original case file, including photographs of evidence. That is what this is. The evidence that was tested would have been the evidence off that sheath. Number 2, chain of custody and current disposition of evidence. Please provide copies of all records that document the treatment and handling of biological evidence in this case. From the initial point of collection, that would have been at the crime scene on Madison Mogen's bed, up to the current disposition, up to the day of the filing. Give me every step. Give me everything that happened in the chain of custody, how it went from Madison's bedroom out through the house, where it went then, what lab, where did it go to, what locker, who logged everything, who, what, where, when. That's chain of custody of biological evidence in this case, from the initial point of collection up to the current disposition. This information should include documentation that indicates where and how the materials were stored. That goes to chain of custody, and that goes to temperature, type of container, was it stored properly, the amount of evidence material that was consumed in testing. So every time something goes through a biological test, some of the cells might become degraded. So they want to know the amount of evidence material that was consumed in testing and the amount of material that remains, and where and how the remaining evidence is stored. In the event that the chain of custody spans several different agencies or laboratories, please address this request to each agency and or laboratory that handled said items. And the reason why this is going to the state of Idaho is because the state is considered to be the party who has control, custody, and if they delegated any of this testing to someone else, well, this is what the defense is basically asking for here. And then you see profiles uploaded to a DNA database, data files, and so on. I'll leave you to read this document for yourself, as I always encourage you to do. Go to the case summary page. You'll see it listed on the case summary page while the matter was still in Latah County, but to see the actual document, the defendant's third supplemental request for discovery that goes into wanting the state to turn over the biological testing, how it was tested, chain of custody, and other related materials, you have to go down to May 3rd, 2023, and look for defendant's third supplemental request for discovery to see that this was an issue that it was at least raised in discovery, and so therefore we can make an educated guess, an opinion that we give. We don't have inside information. We're not attorneys in Idaho. We don't purport to be. We just basically are looking at the documents and rendering opinions based on the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. There is absolutely no indication on the docket that there was any wrongdoing in this matter. We're just basing our opinions on some comments that were made by Ms. Taylor in open court during the suppression motion hearings of the 23rd and 24th, when she kept referring to issues regarding noncompliance with policies and procedures. We don't know if this is true or not true. It's a representation by an officer of the court, so that gives us a lot of comfort that there's probably some concern there. But if this actually happened, there was a problem with noncompliance policies and procedures, or there was a break in custody, that's a matter that the defense would need to raise, and that ultimately Judge Hippler would then render a ruling on, or potentially a trial as well. This will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. I thank you as always for joining us here today, and please do like, subscribe our channel if you enjoy our content, and leave your comments. Thank you.